Hey, potato friends. So, a friend gave me the idea to start talking about school, and I was like, okay, fine, I'll talk about one of my most passionate subjects when it comes to school, English, because I just love, no, I don't. Well, what I really want to talk about English is about how much it sucks. We get so many trash books in English, it's like not even a joke. So I'm here to tell you about all the trash books I was forced to read. So let's start this list off with The Outsiders. This actually isn't that bad of a book. I read it in 8th grade. It's the only book I remember reading in 8th grade. I read it for, I think, summer reading. It wasn't too bad. I liked it. It's a nice book about kids who are get involved in a bunch of gang stuff in New York City, and like I think in the 50s, like there's basically two gangs. There's the greasers, which are like the poor people with like hair grease in their hair, and they don't exactly have the best background. And then there's the SOS, the Sox. It's spelled SOCS, I think. I'm gonna call them the Sox. They're basically rich kids who just get into crime and do whatever, and their parents don't care. And so they end up getting into a fight and stuff. And there's some other stuff about like one of them being a criminal and stuff. It's a whole thing. But the message of the book wasn't bad. The story itself was actually entertaining, and it was a nice story. It's not bad in any way. And so yeah, that rounds up 8th grade. It's the only book I actually remember. Now on to 9th grade, which is where the majority of these books are, because I'm a sophomore in high school right now. So I've only gotten up to like a little bit of books in there. And then in high school, all of these are really just from freshman year. So let me get into those. It starts off, freshman year starts off with summer reading, which was, the books were Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. It's basically a science fiction novel like the rest of Ray Bradbury's stuff. It's a story where all the characters end up forsaking books and they burn them all. Yeah, I know, sounds familiar. And basically the entire society is just of people who hate books and just watch TV all the time and try and be happy all the time. At least I think that's how it works. And the story focuses on one fireman whose job is to really set fires and burn books, because the books are like sources of knowledge. Apparently, that's the premise, I think, or at least to my memory. I don't remember it all that well. Personally, the story is trash. It is incredibly boring and just uninteresting, and the majority of people I know hated it because of just the story and how boring it was. However, I talked about it with a friend, and they explained to me some things about it that I haven't really thought about. Sort of like how it portrays certain ideas in our society, like how we can't pursue happiness and stuff. Now, I don't know about that, because it's been a while since I read it, and so I honestly don't know what to think. And so what I'm gonna do is actually reread the book like they told me to do, and maybe I'll end up making another video talking about it. Personally, right now, I kind of hate it just because the story was so boring and it made no sense. Like, it went from, okay, this dude's burning books, to he's running from the law on a television show, and now everything's blown up for no reason. Yeah, it made no sense. So I really hated it. But I'm willing to give it another shot just to see the ideas it portrays that I may have not understood at the time. So I'll give you updates on that. Why did I get kicked out? Alright, then the other summer reading book I have to read, because we have to read two books. The other book was Animal Farm. Animal Farm is basically a book about communism, which means I love it. It's my favorite book I've ever had to read for English, because communism is funny, guys. I'm doing it for the memes, but I actually like the book. It's an allegory for I think it's just communism in general, and mainly the Russian Revolution. and how like communism overswept Russia, and then it turned into a whole thing. I actually really liked it. It had a really good story, or at least as good as a book you're forced to read is. It focuses on an animal farm, surprisingly, where a big pig dies, and then he becomes a martyr, where all the pigs stand up and fight against the oppressive humans that rule them, and they eventually sort of become their own society. But then what happens is the pigs, since they're the smartest, they get out of control and give themselves more power until basically they're just the humans and being in charge of everyone. And they're basically taking the place, and it shows how communism doesn't really work because no one's ever actually really equal. Because like the slogan they said is some are just more equal than others, and that's what the pigs use as justification for basically becoming tyrants. And I thought that was an interesting book, not only just as the way it's just dissing communism. Remember guys, communism was funny. It's also just like, it was actually entertaining and enjoyable. So I thought that the story was good, and it's probably my favorite thing that I've been forced to read. So if you haven't read it and you're not gonna read it for school, I'd recommend you read it, because literally I'm recommending you read an English book. That's how good it is. It's not like the best book ever, but it's entertaining and I enjoyed it. So maybe you guys will enjoy it too. Alright, and now we're on to what we actually learned in English class. It starts off with, after those 2 summer reading books, I believe it goes to, you go to Greek literature, we went to Greek mythology. And so the 2 books that we had to do for Greek mythology were Medea, Medea and the Odyssey. I don't know if we read the entire of the Odyssey. Maybe we did, but it honestly felt like an abridged version because I felt like I was missing stuff. So I don't know if it's the full Odyssey. Maybe I'm just being stupid and it actually is. But I don't know. So there's the Odyssey and Medea. Medea is basically about a book where a wife was ditched by her husband. Like he just left her. Straight up left her. It's kind of cruel, sad, and whatever. And then she gets mad at him and gets her revenge on him by basically going psycho. Like, this woman ends up killing her children, and her husband's like new wife, because what happens is he leaves her to try and marry this princess lady or whatever, and be part of the royal family, and she gets her revenge by not only killing the princess, but then killing her own 2 children, so the guy can't have them. Yeah, she's kind of crazy. So, not gonna lie, the book is kind of dumb. I didn't enjoy it that much. It was kind of just like, okay, this lady's crazy. This is weird. The only exciting thing was just the plot twist at the end, where she killed her own children. Like, come on, girl, why did you do that? Alright, give me a reason. You don't have to go boy crazy and then just, like, kill your whole family. That's not how it works. So, yeah, that book was pretty trash just because of how stupid it was, and I recommend you don't read it unless you're forced to, because all you need to know is some Greek women were kind of crazy. Anyways, Odyssey time. The Odyssey I was actually excited to read it at first, because it's like this big thing that a lot of people talk about, and it's like, oh, it's such a great book or whatever. Bro, no, why did I do that? Can I give it? Whatever, it's fine. So, I'll be honest, it was okay, and that's about it. Like, at first, it seemed kind of interesting, especially the first part, where he basically gets lost, and then finds a Cyclops, and then has to beat him up. But then after that, after he beats the Cyclops, and then gets cursed, it just gets kind of boring. Like, he just goes, like, Odysseus, who's the main character, yeah, I know, kind of a play on Odyssey, but Odysseus, the main character, he kind of just goes on a bunch of random adventures and loses everything he has because he's just garbage. And that's kind of interesting, but it wasn't. After the Cyclops, to me, it just got a lot more boring, at least to my memory. And then even after the Cyclops, basically he just comes back, and then kills a bunch of people. Like with the sun, he just gets super powerful, and he's just like, all right, time to kill all these people and liberate my wife, who is being held by these random dudes. Yeah, I don't know, it was weird. But To be honest, it was kind of just meh. Like, the only interesting part was the beginning, and after that, it kind of just fell short, and I just didn't care about it. Maybe there's supposed to be some crazy English figurative whatchamacallit, but as the story goes, it was just not interesting, and that's what I'm judging these off of, just how good of a story they are, like, entertainment-wise. Honestly, the only one where I might not judge it that way is if the theme just overplays everything else in the story. That is the only time where I'm gonna overlook the fact that it has a trash story. Fahrenheit 451. Yeah, that's probably the only way I would overlook something like that, but that's mainly the criteria I'm judging these off of, just how actually enjoyable they are. Okay, so then after Greek mythology, we decided to just go to more stuff. I don't even know. I guess Europe is what they did, because freshman English was basically just a trip around the world, is what they described. So the next two books were Julius Caesar and Night, which is a memoir. Let's start with Night, because this is kind of serious. Night is basically a memoir about the Holocaust. So yeah, not exactly the most cheery book to read. To be honest, it was kind of emotionally scarring, not gonna lie. There's a lot of messed up stuff in that book. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It really did show the horrors of the Holocaust, so like that's not something you can really hate on. I respect it for what it was as depicting the horrors of it, and I would say you should read it just to understand the Holocaust, but I'll tell you right now, it's not an enjoyable read. It is like the exact opposite of an enjoyable read. This is not for pleasure, it's more just for understanding. So take that with a grain of salt or a grain of something. Just understand that it's not exactly the most lighthearted book for lighthearted people or people who can't take that kind of incredibly emotionally damaging stuff. Yeah, that book was a little messed up for a good reason, because, you know, the Nazis were messed up. This video is getting demonetized, if I even monetize it, but I missed it. Yeah, this video definitely took a serious tone. So, Night was respectable, but emotionally damaging. And then there's Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar by Shakespeare. You'd think for Shakespeare it would be pretty good, right? Well, to be honest, when I look back at it, it was sort of just mediocre. It's how I see the Odyssey almost. Like, it's good in the way that it's just like, it's kind of entertaining seeing the way Shakespeare depicted it and seeing how all the characters act and stuff and the different ways they do things. But at the same time, it's like, it's not all that captivating. It's not all that interesting. Maybe it's just because it's old English and Shakespeare is boring and stuff. I don't know. But it's not something you really want to know what happens. It's not something that really, like, draws you in, like I think Animal Farm did. Animal Farm, I was actually interested in seeing what happened, just because I was curious about what the writer was willing to do. But compared to Animal Farm, it had none of that at all. So I don't really think it's like all that enjoyable, but it's not bad. It's just not like super amazing. Yeah, and then there's one more book from English that 9th grade English that I need to talk about. Midsummer's Night Dream by Shakespeare. It is, without a doubt, the worst thing I've ever had to read. It is pure garbage. It is so trash. You have no idea. I can't even talk about all of it because it's so bad. I need to make my own. I need to make its own video just to talk about it. I haven't done it yet because honestly, it's going to be a bit more structured than a rant video like this. Like, the only really structure I have of this is I wrote down notes before this to understand what I need to talk about. But it's so garbage, it needs its own video to explain just how trash and just how much I hate it. It is the worst thing I've ever had to read. And this is Shakespeare, fellows. This is Shakespeare, folks. This is supposed to be good, and it's pure trash. The trashiest trash you could think of. It is so bad. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna wrench just thinking about it. Did I say wrench? I meant to say retch. Like throw up retch, not wrench. But it's garbage, alright? It was terrible, and I am never gonna read it again. I don't even read it for the recap. I'll just explain with my very limited memory and knowledge. I won't even, for a film video, I'm not even gonna read it. I'm just gonna explain what little I remember. Okay, and that basically rounds up 9th grade English. Some of them were like, okay, Animal Farm was like good. Night was scarring, but understandably so, and I don't hate on it for being Night, because it's important, but that's about it. I have a couple more books to go over that I've had to read up to this point for 10th grade English, those being the 2 summer reading books I had to read, and then the 2 books we're reading right now, because at least here where I am, 10th grade English is American English, so we're reading books all about America. Yay. It's, they're interesting, I guess. They're sort of all over the place and really weird, just like America itself. So, let me get into these. The summer reading books that we had to read were To Kill a Mockingbird and Catcher in the Rye. Now, To Kill a Mockingbird, it was alright, I guess. It's basically a story about racism, kind of. It starts by focusing on kids doing kid stuff in a southern town in like the 1930s, which is cute, I guess. But to be honest, that part was kind of boring. That was like the low of the story. That's just like the part that you don't care about, because like who cares about kids? I hate kids, so it's not something I'd want to read about. But then it sort of gets interesting, because basically the dad of the kids ends up having to go to do a trial because he's a lawyer, so he has to do a trial for a black guy. How he's convicted of a very bad act that I'm not gonna name because I don't want to have this video taken down. But he gets accused of something bad, and their dad has to try and defend him and prove him innocent. And it's like a whole big thing about race, because everyone hates how he's, defending a black guy, especially in a southern town, So it's not something they're gonna exactly like, because they feel like you should just go to jail without even having a trial, because they're all racist idiots. And so that part was interesting itself, and it did teach some lessons about growing up. So I appreciated the story. But it's not my favorite. It's more just like, okay, I read that happened, and moving on. That's it. It's not that much special compared to that. So, okay, and then the second book we had to read, Catcher in the Rye, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with. For one thing, I love it because it's interesting, cool, and relatable. And I hate it because it's annoying. Like, incredibly annoying. And sort of boring, too. So, the way Catcher in the Rye works is you're following the mind of a young Holden Caulfield, yes. Basically this 16-year-old who's really messed up in the head, kind of. He goes through a preparatory school, and then he breaks out by just leaving, and then he just goes all around New York, and that's about it. He goes all around New York, and he's like, okay, I'm done, and yeah, then he's done. Story-wise, it's mediocre. It's sort of just dude goes around, finds out that he likes his sister, finds out that he hates some stuff, and the end. He basically just goes around New York and does not much else. For story-wise, I was kind of disappointed. I thought it could have been something like really interesting, like a journey around New York or something. But then it was just him doing stuff and being sad the whole time. But then we actually talked about it, right? And then we discussed it, and basically our idea, at least what we were supposed to do when we're thinking of this story, is to examine it like a psychologist would. Basically to psychoanalyze the main protagonist. And that turned the book into a whole new perspective. It actually became cool because you get to see how Holden thinks and how he works, and it makes just the really confusing style of the story, which is basically just to say whatever he does and do things for stupid reasons. It turns that into some sort of sense, and it actually makes it interesting. However, there is a downside to that, and it's the book. It's super annoying. Like, just the way the main character talks, just like the language that he uses, it's terrible. Like, you can't go 5 seconds without going on a tangent, like a 1 or 2 page tangent. It's worse than me trying to make these YouTube videos. It's really bad. It's like pure garbage in terms of reading, because then you just get really boring when he just goes on some random tangent and you're like, ugh, I had to sit through this now. I mean, to be fair, it does make sense, because it's his own mind, really, that we're seeing, and so, of course, it's gonna, like, be jumbled all over the place and go on a bunch of tangents, and just the language itself, too. He has always, like, says something, and then says it again. He's like, oh, yeah, they're really cool. I mean it. Or, like, I'm not lying. Or, yeah, they're really cool. I really mean they're cool. Like, it's just the language and just the tangents and stuff. It makes it really annoying and hard to follow. And it makes it not fun. Like, I understand why they did it, but I would honestly still rather if they didn't do it. Like, it's that frustrating and that annoying. One other thing I sort of glazed over. I said it was relatable because it's sort of what I'm going through right now, because Holden basically just hates everything and wants everything to go away because only some things are cool, which is what goes through my mind right now. Everything should burn. That's not entirely true, but I'm sort of going through this idea of just like, things are kind of cringe and stupid. Why do we do them? And also sort of like, you like certain things but thinks that other things are gross or weird. Yeah, I agree with that too. So it's sort of like relatable in a sense, but at the same time it's also just like annoying and just please stop and end this. So it's a bit conflicting, to say the least. But yeah, that's Catcher in the Rye. Enjoyable, but very, very hateable. And finally, we have the 2 books that I sort of just read. Basically about Puritans for some reason. I don't know. It's just America, and Puritans equals America, because America. So, like, yeah. From what I understand, no. The books we had to read were The Crucible by Arthur Miller, I think, and then The Scarlet Letter by, I think, Nathaniel Hawthorne or something like that. So The Crucible itself honestly isn't a bad book. I liked it kind of because it's mostly just pure chaos. It's a book basically retelling the Salem witch trials in order to compare something that was going on in the time period, which was the Red Scare in the 1950s, like during the Cold War after World War II. People were freaking out about communists, and it was making a comparison to that, to the Salem witch trials. And it's interesting, and it's funny how everything goes to chaos. Like, that's like the main gimmick of the book. Everything just goes to chaos, and things are incredibly stupid, and that's why I like it. But it's not like super interesting either. It's kind of just funny because of how stupid it is, and that's it. It really just shows you how stupid American classics are. My PC's about to die. That's not good. Let's wrap up this video. And then the last one is The Scarlet Letter, which is garbage. I haven't even finished reading it yet. We're only like halfway through the book. Yeah, I don't even need to finish it to tell you that it's garbage. Like, it's not Midsummer's Night Dreams level of garbage. It still has some merit to it because it's at least I don't know, it has logic, and it has a story, and it's somewhat interesting, at least, but it's garbage. You don't even want to read it. It's literally just the worst old English book you can think of. You can't even understand a sentence because of just how much vocab that you don't know, and just the incredibly annoying English that the writer uses. Like, you can't read the actual version. I have to literally use a SparkNotes translation into modern English because of how bad it is. Literally, it's so bad. You don't even want to know. I sincerely hope that you don't have to read this if you're watching it, even though decent number of views I get are from people at school, so at least you guys can take the torture with me, right? But yeah, that book is trash, and that wraps up my English recap and why I hate it so much. Thanks to my friend for the idea. If you even see this, probably not, or at least probably not this far into the video, because you just watch for like 3 minutes and then give up. But thanks for the idea. English sucks. I hate it so much. I'll probably end up making another video in like a year. Like, the channel's dead, and then I'm coming back like, English still sucks, and talk about all the other trash books I had to read. So I guess that's something that'll happen. If it doesn't, I would be shocked. But English sucks. Give someone you love a hug, and I'll see ya later.